So I've got a house that I manage, property management. Tenant's been there for a while. Tenant's moving out next week after about a 2-year lease. And the owner, it lives in Chicago. Everybody's fine, good relationship. Owner is trying to, we're taking back the house at the end of this month when the tenant vacates, as the owner is going to take back his property. He's going to remodel the house completely. It's like a 5,000 square foot house, so it's a pretty big project. And he's going to remodel and update it and all that good stuff. So about 2 weeks ago, we made arrangements with the tenant to do so, but the tenant, that we're going to get contractors in there, but the tenant never confirmed it, so we canceled everything. And then finally the tenant responded back and we confirmed today. This was 2 weeks ago. We confirmed an appointment for today. So imagine this guy flies in from Chicago, the owner, getting 2 general contractors, myself, a designer, right? And just trying to coordinate that with the tenant. So it's 5 different people's schedules. So this was on the schedule for 2 weeks. And we're supposed to meet this morning at 9:30, no problem. Everybody was just going to show up and do their thing. Last night, about 7 o'clock, 2 things happened. I get an email from the tenant. I sent the tenant an email yesterday morning saying, hey, just confirming that the owner and the designer will be at the house and a contractor will be at the house, today at 9:30. He didn't respond back until 7 o'clock last night. And he writes, no worries. Has everybody been vaccinated? That's it. Hell of a time to ask that question. At 7:15, I get a phone call from the owner. Hey, just landed, blah, blah, blah. Not as hot as I thought it was going to be. Looking forward to seeing everybody tomorrow morning. So I call the designer and I say, hey, I don't know what this question means, but I need to put everybody on alert. So she calls the 2 contractors. Both the contractors, none have been vaccinated. One has not been vaccinated. One said he has COVID, so he feels protected. The designer has not been vaccinated. The owner is. I am. So I say to the owner last night, I don't know how this is going to play out. I don't know if he's going to let us in, not let us in. It's a hell of a time to ask the question at literally the 11th hour, because 11 hours later, we're going to be in the house. So I've got to run out to kind of coordinate this to see if this is going to be an issue or not going to be an issue when we get to the house. So the question becomes, and this is what the owner said to me, do I have a legal right to go in the house? And I said, well, according to the Tenant Landlord Act, yeah, we gave him 48 hours notice. He confirmed it, absolutely. But throw the word COVID in there, it changes everything. Greg says this morning, you have no right to ask COVID because maybe it's a HIPAA violation. Maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong. I don't know. I don't think it is, but I asked anyway. I don't believe I believe, I'm not an expert in healthcare, but I think HIPAA is a medical condition, not a medical question, right? I'm not asking what your ailment is. I'm not asking what's wrong with you. We ask if you got vaccinated. I think it's a fair question. And anyway, but regardless of that, it's a fair question and I don't know the answer either. So I've got to run out and make sure that when we knock on this door, everybody gets in the house. Tenant says, nope, you can't come in. What do you do? I don't know the answer. Tune in next week. I'll tell you what happened. I mean, I really don't know the answer. These are all just, unprecedented times. Let's go one step further. What happens if COVID is not the issue? COVID is just has nothing to do with anything. And all of a sudden the tenant at the last minute says, I've changed my mind. You can't come in. Right? Does that change the equation? How about if the tenant said, my wife and kids got sick. I prefer that you don't come in. Does that change the equation?
Yes.
Right. So, what the question is, what moves the ball and what changes the game? And I don't know it any more than anybody else. I said 100 times, I may proctor these meetings and I may be the recipient of a lot of the questions, but, I don't know all the answers either because, especially when you throw the word COVID in, it just changes everything.
Ask that question tomorrow.
Yeah. So tune in and I'll give you the answer. I'll come to business development tomorrow and I'll give you.
Ask on the broker forum tomorrow.
Oh yeah, I could ask that question too. So but I'm just telling you, there's no solid answer, there's no right answer, there's no wrong answer. So, the good news, it's been a nice, good relationship between tenant and landlord and property manager. And he knows we're coming, getting in is not the issue. So I like to think when I get there, it'll be a smooth coming in, coming out, looking at the house issue. But what happens if the tenant says, no, you can't come in because you haven't been vaccinated? Does he have a right to do that? Is it fair? Was it last minute? All the above.
And then he should want to know when you were vaccinated and have you gotten the booster shot?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, right, but where does it end, right? So
It doesn't end. That's the problem.
All right. Well, this is not a discussion whether you should get vaccinated or not, but
Right.
stay tuned for that. So with that, I've got to run. This wasn't planned. This all happened late last night. My suggestion is, Greg really wasn't prepared. I just threw him in the trenches at the last minute, so we didn't really have a topic. But I would just continue to talk about market conditions, guys. It's out there. It's out there, and that's probably the primary phone call that I'm getting from people is the market conditions. What are people saying? What are people doing? Here's a perfect example. Paul Baker is doing a deal. Calls me last night. He's doing a deal. He's got a seller, and it's an in-house sale with another agent from our company doing the buyer side. And the buyer did the home inspection and didn't like the fact that there was polybutylene piping, and asked for the seller to redo it, amongst other things. Now, Paul's comment to me was, my seller is this nice little old lady. She doesn't quite understand all this. And I think the buyer's agent or the buyer is being unreasonable. And I said to Paul, you're mixing two concepts with one. Okay, actually maybe three. You like this little old lady who's your seller, but she's still a seller. She could be a mean old man or a nice little old lady. A seller at the end of the day is still a seller. None of that changes. And the buyer just didn't like it. Paul made phone calls in this community to all these other agents, buyers and sellers that bought houses in the last 6 months in the same community. And some didn't know they had polybutylene, some did know, but for nobody it was an issue. So Paul, as he's concerned, it's a non-issue. But Paul knows better. And I said, Paul, get your personality and get your personal feelings out of this. It has nothing to do with what you think is reasonable or not reasonable. The business was followed exactly the way the business should be. Buyer disapproved something, and the seller can make one of three responses. I'm not dealing with it. I'll give you money credit, or yes, I'll fix it. It's just that simple. So when we get into these issues, sometimes we have to remove our feelings, how we feel about our buyers and sellers. Was the buyer's agent unreasonable? Maybe
I
not.
think
I don't. Hold on. I don't think so. But here's where I'm going with this. If this, my guess, and Paul agreed 4, 5, 6 months ago, this would never have come up on a Binzer with the way the market was with the demand. But demand is now waning a little bit. Paul didn't get an immediate, full price 9 offers in 24 hours. It took him only a couple of days to get an offer, and it still wasn't full price. So the point being, the demand is waning a little bit, and buyers are asking things. But 6 months ago, this would never have been an issue. Go ahead, Julie.
so. I think perhaps one of Paul's concerns is not just the immediate. Yes, you have 3 choices, but now is he required to update the spuds
Yeah,
and
we talked
change
about-
that? How does that impact?
Sure.
So the buyer's opinion that these are bad
Yeah.
pipes, does the opinion of
Nope.
their inspector have to change the spuds?
No, because it's not an opinion, it's a fact. Polybutylene is a fact. That's not an opinion. An opinion is this is a good thing or a bad thing. That's an opinion. But the
Right.
fact is you have copper, galvanized plumbing, polybutylene, plastic, whatever. That's a fact. So we talked about that. And Paul
Right.
understands that a seller must disclose that. The bigger question was, will this be, if this deal falls through because the seller won't participate in that, will it be an issue for the next buyer?
Mhm.
Right?
Right.
Maybe it will be, maybe it won't be, right? But I think sometimes we just have to remove our personal relationship with our buyer and seller out of it And as good agents, we present the facts, we present the pros and cons. You know, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if you do this, this is what could happen. If you agree to it, then we move forth. If you don't agree to it, they could, you know, cancel the deal. You could offer them money. You could pay for the whole thing. You can give them, you know, try to negotiate. But at the end of the day, you know, I think when we get ourselves involved, you know, when we put ourselves involved in that, rather than just presenting the options to our buyers and sellers. I'll give you another one. Another agent called me this week where the sellers, he's selling the house. It's a husband and wife, older couple, and they had a new roof put on about, you know, 2 years ago. The husband did all of the stuff, you know, the wife was, you know, they're all older couple. And so, you know, the husband did everything. And supposedly the roofer made a guarantee to the husband about some, you know, guaranteed the roof of the work, but never got it like the paperwork. So our agent wants to be a good agent and he wants to call the roofing company and, you know, and get this document, which is fine. You can certainly do that. But, you know, it's not up to him to do it. It's really up to the seller to do it. Right? Because the seller is the one that did it, not the agent. And the agent can't make this guarantee. So he was just trying to, the problem we run into is we sometimes cross the line of good service where we start entering into arena that we don't belong in. We just have to be careful. Where does good service stop and start, and where do we push our boundaries? All right, I'm gonna say one last thing, because this is something I'm dealing with. If we ever have an issue with an agent to agent in this company, I don't care if it's a personality thing, it's a human relations, human resources, if it's a deal. If we ever have an issue with another agent, or you ever have an issue with another agent in this office, you guys need to come to us. We had an agent that had an issue with another agent in this company, and they went to ADRE. And I get freaking fined because one agent didn't like another agent and they made a complaint. You guys have to realize when a complaint is made, it's not made necessarily to you as the agent. It's made in your name because Brian Redford did X, Y, and Z, and it's a violation, but I get fined. This brokerage gets fined. And Greg and I, that was completely unacceptable. And we've asked this agent to leave the company. You got a problem within the family, let's keep it within the family. It doesn't go outside. It doesn't belong. That is just something that was totally out of line and totally rude. I don't care if these two guys hate each other. It stays in-house. Because what you don't realize is I'm the one that gets fined, and I'm the one that has to answer, and I have to go before the board, and I'm the one that has to justify or unjustify why an agent did. Was the agent that was complained upon wrong? Absolutely. Was he sloppy in his work? You bet. Boy, but it would have been so much easier if we just kept it in-house, because now I've got to answer for him. All right. All right, I got to run, guys. So that's
Wow, thanks for making me follow that, Sandy.
Yeah, so.
Good luck,
Okay.
Sandy.
Leave your computer on.
Yeah, not touching it. All right, sorry, guys. Thank you, Greg.
So does anybody have any topics they would like to talk about before we jump into what little time I had to prepare for this today?
Okay.
All right.
It's not so bad to listen to this crap. I mean, seriously, sorry. It's great. Love it.
All right, let's see what we got here. All right, legal trivia, everybody. Is everybody ready? Brett, I expect you to do the best because I think you may have seen this before. So let's go ahead and see what we got here.
Putting that pressure on me.
Well, I like to put pressure on professional athletes. So here we go. All right, swimming pool and HOA. Here's the issue. An HOA rule prohibits the use of community swimming pool by anyone under the age of 16 years of age unless accompanied by an adult. The tenant's 13-year-old son has been barred from the use of the swimming pool because he repeatedly violation of the HOA rules. Is this HOA rule enforceable under the Fair Housing Act? Everybody come off of mute.
Yes.
Okay, we got one yes.
I'll say yes to it.
I say yes too.
Okay, anybody, do we have any no's? All right. Answer is probably not. The Fair Housing Act, with some limited exceptions for the housing of the senior citizens, prohibits discrimination in housing against families with children under the age of 18. So they can't really do that.
So they can't keep them out of the pool?
They can't.
Even
They
if you-
can strongly encourage that the parents are there, and they can write letters to the family saying that they need to be there. It is a rule of the community, but they can't enforce it under the fair housing. Question number 2. An age-restricted community. So this is perfect for you, Brett. A buyer wants to purchase a home in an age-restricted community. The buyer has a disabled child who must live with the buyer to receive proper care and treatment. Can an age-restricted community prohibit the purchase of a home by a buyer with a disabled child?
No.
No.
No. Got 2
No.
no's. 3, 4. Anybody else? You know, Brett's not saying anything because he doesn't know for sure. So he's more a commercial guy anyway. So we'll cut it.
You're dang right. I'm nervous now after I got the first one wrong.
All right, probably not. In a general age community, in age-restricted communities, they are exempt from the fair housing laws prohibit discrimination against families with children. This exemption does not apply, however, to a person with a disability. The AZ Court of Appeals has ruled that the refusal of the homeowner association to waive that age restriction to allow an underage disabled person to reside with his parents violated the reasonable accommodation requirements of the fair housing laws. And if you want to know, there's the actual case that was involved. Sex offenders. All right. During her representation of a potential tenant, the licensee discovered that their prospective tenant was a registered sex offender. The agent is uncomfortable and wants to terminate the agency relationship. Here's the issue. May the agent terminate the agency relationship because the prospective tenant is a registered sex offender?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Any no's?
Yes.
All
No.
right, we got 1 no and everybody else are yeses. All right. Assuming that the reason for the desired termination is prospective tenant is a sex offender, the agent may terminate the relationship. Registered sex offenders are not a protected class under the Arizona state of federal fair housing laws. As you can tell, I did a lot of fair housing on this one because it's everybody's favorite subject to talk about, right? All right, when everybody goes in and they're doing their hours, what's the last class that they register for?
Fair housing.
I know it's my last one that I go for. So, but I usually do it twice. I do it once as soon as it closes. My 2 years are up, and then I do it again right afterwards. That way I have it really ready to go for the next 2 years. So, all right, next question. A landlord wishes to rent his unit to a handicapped tenant who uses an assistant dog. May the landlord charge a pet deposit for this assistant's dog? This is an easy one.
No.
Chris Kelly, what do you think?
No,
And why is that?
It's not a pet.
because yeah, it's not considered a pet.
That is correct. Charging a pet deposit would likely be an act of discrimination under the Fair Housing Act. Basically, they are there as a working animal. They are not a pet, even though they are when they're not working, but they are considered a working animal. Professional buildings. All right, this one's for Brett all the way across the board, unless he's already, decided that he's not going to be on he just left. The commercial office building was constructed in 1960. The building has multiple offices and rents office space to various types of businesses. The owner/landlord recently rented office space to a tenant who operates a professional service business, which is the tenant, and who happens to have a disabled employee that requires the use of a wheelchair. The door to the office bathroom is only 24 inches wide. In this regard, the employee's wheelchair will not fit through the bathroom door and the employee cannot access the restroom. The question is, must the landlord or tenant alter the bathroom so that it is accessible to disabled person in a wheelchair?
The answer is no to that.
Okay, there's one no,
Yes.
there's one yes.
I'll say yes.
Okay, Sarah? Anyone? Veronica, what are your thoughts?
I'm thinking it's a no, but I'm not certain.
Okay,
I agree, Veronica. I know
Alright.
this one. I know
I
this
think
one.
it's a no,
you think it's a no,
but they could request accommodation.
but the answer is actually yes, they do.
They do.
But it was built in 1960, so it doesn't follow ADA rules.
But if they've done any type of construction, if they've done any changes within the building, they have to maintain the current code. So
Okay.
yes, under Title III of the Americans with Disability Act, it covers in pertinent parts, places of public accommodation and commercial facilities. If you do any type of work within the building, you have to bring it up to code at that time. So most likely, if it was built in 1960, there has been accommodations within the building itself. Most likely they have changed the walls, moved doors, but when they do that, they have to do everything else, including and not limited to, but if there needs to be a ramp, they have to provide a ramp or an easy access into the building for disabled people in wheelchairs. All right, so it's a trick question. I have to throw a couple of those in every once in a while. Sellers and showing restrictions. The buyer's agent contacted seller to arrange a showing. It was a rainy day and the seller asked the buyer and agent to remove their shoes before viewing the property. The agent notified the seller that the buyer is in a wheelchair, but indicated the buyer would stay on the tiled floor areas. The seller stated he did not want the buyer in his house because he had carpeting throughout the entire house. The agent asked the buyer could view the house on a day when it was no rain. The seller refused and said the buyer could not view the house because he didn't want a wheelchair in his house. This just sounds lots and lots of issues, right? Can the seller refuse to allow a potential buyer in a wheelchair into his house?
No.
Brian?
No, because I believe that's discrimination.
Okay, we've got a couple of no's and discrimination. Any yeses?
I would say based on the wheelchair, no, but he cannot allow a buyer in his house, period.
Well, and there are times where we have sellers saying that they will not allow certain buyers into the house, but that has to be written into the ER.
Yeah.
And same thing with agents. You know, I've seen that in the ER where it has the seller would not allow a certain agent into the house. So, all right, answer is no, they cannot do that. So under the statute, ARS 41-1491.19 entitled Discrimination Due to Disability states, a person may not discriminate in the sale or rental or otherwise make unavailable or deny a dwelling to any buyer or renter because of a disability. Simple as that. It doesn't matter if they're in a wheelchair or if they have PTSD. I mean, whatever the case is, they can't do it. So nice job, everybody. Seller disclosure. One of the homes in a seller's neighborhood is a drug rehabilitation group home for recovering drug addicts. Is the seller required to disclose to potential buyers this drug rehabilitation group home?
Yes.
Okay,
No, because that's considered a protected class, I believe.
okay. We're at 1 and 1. Anybody else?
No.
Okay, there's another no. I think, was that you, Helen?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Jay, you want to chime in on any of these? Or Dawn? Everybody should know this one. So, no, they cannot. A recovering drug addicts or recovering alcoholics, but not current drug or alcohol users, qualify as a member of the disability protected class under fair housing laws. Therefore, not only is the seller of the home not required to make the disclosure, the seller is prohibited from making any disclosure of a drug or alcohol rehabilitation group home in the neighborhood because they are a protected class, just like Nora said. All right, here's one that we just came up on not too long ago with one of Sandy's emails that he put out. The buyer has presented an offer to purchase a home with a swimming pool. There is no fence around the swimming pool. The buyer has small children and has requested the buyer's offer that the sellers construct a fence around the swimming pool. The seller has refused to accept the buyer's offer. If a buyer has small children, is the seller required to accept the buyer's offer?
No.
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 Probably not. The fair housing laws do not require a seller to construct facilities for the protection of small children. So we've had this come up, and it was probably 2 months ago that we had this come up, and the seller was saying, no, I will construct it, but I will do it under the price that the buyer has to pay for it. They would front it, and then the buyer would have to pay them back. The buyer was unwilling to do that, and the deal fell apart. All right, this is one that touches everybody's dear heart here. A real estate licensee owns a single family residence. The garage of the home has been converted into a small studio apartment. The licensee wants to advertise the studio apartment for rent to a single person. The licensee believes that he or she can advertise for a single tenant because she is exempt from the fair housing rules as the property is an owner-occupied property. Can the licensee advertise her studio apartment for rent to a single tenant only?
Yes.
Okay,
No.
got 2 no's, 1 yes.
No.
No.
There's a bunch of no's right there. So the answer is no. A homeowner cannot publish a discriminatory ad or advertise in violation of Fair Housing Act. So you can't, familial status, you cannot do that. So, however, limited circumstances, there are a guest house on an owner-occupied property can restrict to a single person or specific gender. Regardless of these limitations, they cannot advertise it. So do not apply when a real estate licensee is involved in it. So if you are involved as a licensee, you cannot put that out there.
But could you put, space for one person?
You could do a space. I don't think so.
Accommodation for one person? Then you're not referring to their gender, their familial status, anything. It's just there's room for one person in this unit.
That's the way I took the question.
Well, I don't think so, because you're still saying one, which would most people would probably say it's saying that I have to be single to do that. So I think it still comes down to not advertising that. It's more of when they get in there, the landlord or owner can limit the people, because when they're showing the property, they can see who's there. And if they have a family of 6, they can automatically, especially if it's in Phoenix, you can say, no, I'm not allowed to do that because it's against the law in Phoenix to have more than 2 people per room.
Right.
So I still think you can't do room for one person. I think that's, you would still get yourself in trouble if somebody really asked or pushed it. All right, halfway house. The listing broker has a listing on a home. The listing broker learns that there is a halfway house for recovering alcoholics next door. Can the listing broker disclose the existence of a halfway house to prospective buyers?
No,
No.
because they are recovering and it's a protected class again.
That's
Yeah, they're
right.
a protective class, no.
So you are correct. So if they're recovering, you cannot disclose. Now, if it is a drug house, then yes, you can. But in this case, it's a no. And it's the same ARS number. All right. And the last one right here is note the recovering alcoholics are protected class under fair housing, although alcoholics are not recovering, may have a disability. The protection of the fair housing law specifically applies to recovering alcoholics. All right, that's all I have on my legal trivia today. You guys did really well. And stop here.
And Greg, I got a question for you.
Okay.
I saw recently in Oregon that they banned the, quote unquote love letters to sellers.
Yes.
Is that something that's been discussed in Arizona, that it could be coming down?
It was actually discussed. I know that the last broker meeting that Sandy and I were talking about a few days ago, that was actually brought up. And a lot of people are wanting that to go away because it really will show sex, race. In some instances, it could be religion based on hairstyles and type of clothing that they're wearing. So they're really trying to push away from any type of love letter that has pictures with it. But in saying that, will this eventually lead to where you can't even put a name on the contract? Because if you have a name that is from another country, it can be considered discriminatory because you wouldn't sell to my client. So it's one of those that we're taking step by step, but right now it is being brought up, but there's nothing that's stopping anybody yet. I think it'll be probably within the next year though. Julie, do you have any thoughts on that process? Because you see a lot more on the backside there.
Yeah, I agree. I'm surprised that they haven't been ruled out thus far. And what I tell people is if you are trying to make a difference or make an impact, there are ways to do that without dipping your toe into the fair housing. If your clients have dogs and you notice that the sellers have dogs, write a cute note from your dog to their dog. Or if you notice they're Nebraska Cornhusker fans, something that is not a protected class, but connects your client to the seller. I would say that's probably the safest area if you really feel like you need to make an impact.
Anybody else have an opinion on that? I know when I sold my house last August, I sold it to a person who had a dog. They sent a picture of their dog and they knew that I was a dog lover. They sent a picture of the dog and
it works. Yeah.
It works. I mean, because between that offer and another one, it was only like a $2,000 difference, negligible for the most part. And we went with them because I knew that, they had a dog and I'm a dog lover. So.
Right.
All right. What other questions you guys have today? All right. Well, if you don't have any questions, it's going to be like college. I'm going to let the class out early. Okay. Thank you guys for coming today. Thanks for playing trivia. And I guess I'm going to have to go through and have a few lessons planned just in case Sandy pulls this on me again 5 minutes before and say, hey, I need you to run this. So I apologize for not having more set up for you guys today.
Greg,
Thanks,
I
Greg.
sent you a questionnaire that we could use in the future for something, just some a basic contract questionnaire.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Helen,
Okay.
Did you have a question?
Nope, just thank you.
All right, no problem. Have a great day, everybody. If you have any
Thanks,
questions,
Greg.
give me a call or shoot me a text.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Greg.
Bye, guys.